Most people misunderstand how power actually works. They assume it comes from effort, talent, or working longer hours. In reality, large organizations are shaped by structure, not intention. Across industries, outcomes are determined by roles, leverage, and control. This video looks at how systems reward position, not effort, inside them. Level 1 is defined by visibility without authority. This role exists to gather information, maintain awareness, and ensure nothing is missed. Decisions are not made here, and outcomes are not controlled. The value comes from observation, accuracy, and consistency. This level feeds the system with signals that higher levels act on. Leverage is minimal, but proximity to the system is high. Advancement depends on trust, not insight. Reliability matters more than speed or originality. Errors are costly because bad information travels upward. Success at this level is measured by how quietly and consistently the role is performed. The system does not reward initiative here. It rewards predictability. This position is foundational, not influential. It is where people learn how the structure actually operates before they are allowed to affect it. Level 2 is the execution layer of any system. This role converts plans into action by following defined processes with precision and consistency. Operators move information, handle tasks, and produce measurable outputs, but they do not set direction or change rules. Control is limited to immediate execution, not strategy or design. Exposure is high because performance is visible, and errors are easily traced back to this level. Leverage is low because the work is standardized and can be reassigned, automated, or replaced without altering the system itself. Value comes from speed, accuracy, and compliance, not judgment or creativity. Advancement at this level depends on reliability and throughput, not decision-making authority. The system depends on operators to function, but it does not depend on any single operator to continue. Level 3 represents the layer that stabilizes the system by enforcing standards, processes, and accountability. This role does not decide strategy or produce direct output. Its function is to ensure that decisions made above are executed correctly below. It controls compliance, performance metrics, and operational boundaries. Authority here comes from position, not ownership. The leverage is procedural, defining what is acceptable, correcting deviation, and maintaining consistency at scale. This layer reduces risk, limits chaos, and protects the organization from internal drift. Value is preserved, not created. Advancement depends on reliability, rule adherence, and the ability to manage people within defined constraints. Creativity is limited because variation introduces risk. The system rewards predictability, documentation, and enforcement of norms. This level exists to keep the machine running as designed, not to redesign it. Level 4 is the coordination layer where execution turns into organization. This role does not produce output directly and does not enforce rules either. Its function is to align people, time, and resources so work happens predictably. Coordinators manage schedules, assign priorities, balance workloads, and reduce friction between teams. They control flow rather than tasks. Their leverage comes from visibility across operations, not from authority over outcomes. Decisions here are about sequencing, dependency management, and risk avoidance. When this level functions well, work scales smoothly. When it fails, even strong teams slow down. The coordinator is evaluated on stability, timing, and consistency, not creativity or speed. This position sits between execution and strategy, translating high-level direction into organized action. It is where complexity first becomes manageable and where systems begin to outperform individual effort. Level 5 represents the layer where control shifts from people to systems. This role does not focus on execution or supervision, but on designing how work, resources, and information move across the organization. It governs supply chains, infrastructure, scheduling logic, and operational dependencies. Decisions at this level determine efficiency, resilience, and scalability. While largely invisible, this function holds disproportionate leverage because every other layer relies on it. When logistics are optimized, outcomes improve without added effort elsewhere. When logistics fail, performance collapses, regardless of talent or intent. Authority here comes from control over flow rather than hierarchy. This level doesn't create outputs directly. It determines whether outputs are even possible. Level 6 represents control over a defined operational domain rather than individual tasks or systems. At this level, authority is tied to scope. You are responsible for a specific region, function, or market segment, and outcomes within that boundary flow through you. Decisions are no longer reactive. They are structural. You set priorities, limits, and rules that others must operate within. Revenue and performance become more predictable because activity inside the domain is recurring and governed, not improvised. This role controls access, standards, and escalation paths. Instead of requesting approval for each action, you are trusted to govern the space itself. Risk shifts upward, but so does leverage. Success here depends on maintaining stability, managing conflicts, and aligning incentives across the domain. The value of this level lies in ownership of outcomes, not execution, and in the ability to influence results indirectly through structure rather than direct effort. Level 7 represents the strategic layer of an organization. At this level, authority shifts away from direct oversight and toward directional control. The role is no longer about managing tasks or even teams, but about shaping how the entire system allocates attention, capital, and time. Decisions here determine priorities, boundaries, and long-term positioning. This level controls which initiatives receive resources, which markets or functions are emphasized, and which risks are accepted or avoided. Influence comes from setting frameworks rather than issuing instructions. Because the impact of decisions is delayed and indirect, success depends on judgment, sequencing, and restraint. Errors at this level are expensive, but often invisible until much later. Strategy exists above execution and coordination. It defines what execution is allowed to focus on in the first place. Power here is subtle, structural, and cumulative, shaping outcomes without direct involvement in daily operations. Level 8 represents the executive layer, where influence is exercised through structure rather than action. At this level, work is no longer measured by output or oversight, but by the rules and incentives embedded into the system itself. Decisions here shape how all lower levels behave without direct instruction. Control is indirect, durable, and scalable. Executives define priorities, allocate authority, and set constraints that guide thousands of actions without involvement in any of them. Accountability flows upward, while execution flows downward. Risk is managed through design, not supervision. This layer determines what is rewarded, what is ignored, and what is impossible. Because changes compound over time, small adjustments have outsized effects. Power at this level is quiet and persistent, rooted in ownership, governance, and long-term alignment rather than presence or effort. This structure exists everywhere in corporations, governments, media, and finance. Most people stay near the bottom because they confuse activity with advancement. They increase effort without changing position. Systems don't reward how hard you work. They reward where you sit inside the structure. Once you see that, the question changes. Not, how do I work harder, but which level am I moving toward? That shift explains why some people stay busy forever and others quietly gain control.